We're going to say the pledge in just a moment, but before we do, I do want to rattle off the way this hearing is going to flow today. So our first portion, and I especially want to thank the folks that came down for us, we're going to do the deferred maintenance hearing portion of this hearing first. Then we're going to do the bills, and we're going to come back and close with a discussion on S4272, so that we understand the order. Okay? And with that said, I'm going to ask everybody to rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. If you haven't signed up yet, please do so.
Senator Singer.
Here.
Senator Amato is absent. Senator Moriarty.
Here.
Senator Zwicker will be joining us momentarily. Senator Bryan.
Here. So we're going to begin with the conversation on the bill is the Higher Education Deferred Maintenance Fund. It's S4508. Theory.
Yes, S4508.
In reality, this is a deferred maintenance discussion.
Establishes higher education deferred maintenance fund to provide funding for deferred maintenance needs of public institutions of higher education. There are copies in the member packets, and for the audience, we will be bringing down copies momentarily.
First off, I want to thank many of the institutions and members, Senator Singer, Senator Moriarty, so we've got to explore these types of issues. We appreciate it very much. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask to come up first to join us today is Mr. Dustin Wheaton. Dustin's with SHEO, which I should actually say is the State Higher Education Executive Officers Association. We like SHEO better, Dustin. Thank you. Cheryl Stitt, and Cheryl is the Executive Director of the NJEFA, Educational Facilities Authority. Cheryl, if you want to come on up. All right. And there's 3 seats, right? So if there's 3 seats, Andrew Christ? It's Chris, right? I knew that. All right, Andrew, by the way, is the Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development and Capital Operations at Stevens. New Jersey Institute of Technology, and representing the New Jersey chapter of that. We appreciate all you being here. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and Dustin, why don't we go in the order I read? Am I missing something?
I'm sorry, I did do something on the mic.
Oh, there.
Yeah, so,
I'm sorry.
yeah, just, I
Tell you what,
apologize.
Andrew, give us a moment and we'll bring in. You're not Johnny Carson on the couch. So, sorry about that, man. I apologize. And Dustin, when you settle, why don't you go ahead and take us through?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I have a few slides.
Okay, do the members of the committee have this?
They're in your packets.
Okay.
It all comes from it, but quickly, so I'll introduce SHEO, so the Senior Education Executive Officers Association, so you all have a general understanding of who we are. We are the national association for serving chief executives of statewide governing policy and coordinating boards and their staffs. I think so. We have 64 members, been around since 1954, members in all 50 states, 2 territories, and Washington, D.C. Really what we do is we provide information analysis on education and policy topics. So today I'm going to be presenting some data that we collected on capital appropriations. And really what we're trying to do is like help states connect with each other, understand common challenges, and find good practices and best practices to share. So everybody's not reinventing the wheel, but we also understand state context matters. What works in one state doesn't necessarily work in another state. It might look totally different every way something comes together. So today I have 2 broad topics I want to talk about. Just first of all, present some data we collected on trends in capital appropriations, provide the national context of I think a topic that I think a number of states are wrestling with, and then go to a little bit of a conversation about deferred maintenance challenges. And I think what we see, this is a common challenge across all of our members, and I want to highlight a few things that I think we've found among our members that they found as at least promising practices. So, moving into trends in capital appropriations. Before we dive into the actual trends, I just wanted to start by talking about some capital data considerations. I think it's important to understand capital appropriations are a little bit different than the general operating support for institutions or financial aid support. capital appropriations are very project dependent. So you can have very expensive projects one year, the next year less expensive projects. So you can get wide variation year to year in capital appropriations, and somewhat you can see the data that plays out. The other thing is that capital appropriations are typically extended over a multi-year period. So while the appropriation might be big in one fiscal year, which is what we're capturing, the appropriation is actually extended over multiple years as the project is constructed and built.
3-year bill, for example.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than financial aid. We allocate all spending in the same year. So to start by understanding some context like where capital appropriations fit into the broader higher education funding context. So looking nationally, states spend about $100 billion a year on general operating support. So this is for those institutions to help cover expenses and educate students. Capital appropriations are over $18.5 billion, which is more than states spend on financial aid. For public institutions, this is public institutions only. States spend about $11 billion on financial aid for public institutions. This goes up to keep capital spent. Private institutions about $13.2 billion. So again, in general, states are spending more on capital than they are on financial aid. So it's a big chunk of what's being spent at the state level for higher education. So next, just a quick snapshot for 2023 of what states did allocate for capital appropriations. You see there's a wide range. I played with a number of different ways to present this data and ultimately selected a map because of the variation among states. So you have Arkansas was spending about $2 million on capital, compared to Illinois who's spending about $2.5 billion on capital. And then you kind of have everything in between. Generally, larger states, higher enrollment states tend to spend a little bit more on capital because they have more institutions, more buildings, more facilities. So you do see a correlation there. There were, and I think what we've seen in our data, probably about 3 to 5 states every year that do not spend any capital appropriations. So in 2023, this was Oklahoma, North Dakota, Minnesota, Delaware, and New Jersey was one of the states. Again, this can change over time. So Alabama had nothing for the first 3 years of their data collection, and almost $900 million.
You're not insulting yourself, don't worry about it. So to be clear, you're probably looking at this slide.
Yes.
And we're looking at the known number. That's New Jersey, right? And the states you got involved.
Yes. And so,
Mr. Chairman, can I ask just one question? Just out of curiosity, do most states bond money, or do they do that in their general fund?
that's a good question. I'll get to that in just a
Okay.
couple of slides. If you're okay holding off on that question.
Sure.
It's a great question. So go to the next slide. This will provide a little bit more national context for New Jersey. It's in at least in the like I said, we've only put this data since 2020, so we don't have 30 years of data to go back and look at, which we love to have. This slide shows the average in the darker green on the bar on the left, far left, and then the U.S. median in the middle, and then New Jersey on the right. So you can see the median or the average has bounced around. You kind of get skewed by those large states like Illinois spending multi-billion dollars on capital. The median has been a little bit more steady, kind of. I think what you see is something we would expect in the data as the kind of unknowns of the pandemic and especially fiscal year 2021, those kind of dip in capital appropriations. We've seen a significant rebound in that, at least through 2023. And then, but there can be wide variation based on enrollment, facilities, the age of facilities, condition of facilities, and what states are spending. So I did want to provide, so another context, I pulled out a couple states that have a similar full-time equivalent student enrollment to New Jersey. So New Jersey enrolls just under 250,000 full-time equivalent students. Indiana and Maryland are comparable. They're kind of right on the 220,000, 240,000 FTE student range. Just to see kind of what they were spending. You see, again, you get variation what's being appropriated each year. But both Indiana and Maryland were kind of somewhere in the range of roughly 200 million to they jump up in the later years of the data. And then again, that's what we see sometimes like it tends to be higher education start sometimes, so that you get a big jump. Like Indiana had going from almost 200 million to over $800 million in capital appropriations. not too much of an annual number, but I think the trends do kind of tell a story over time. And we look forward to collecting more data to be able to tell that story better. So here, the question about how states finance capital projects. We collected data, and you see in 2020, 2021, it was only about 11 to 17% of projects were funded by cash, so we're funding that's going out, like probably general fund appropriations. In those years, 85 to 90% of capital projects were funded through debt financing. And I think what we've seen probably since 2022 into 2023 is like state budgets were in a little bit better position, and they had more, the surplus was higher, so they had more cash on hand to be able to fund projects through cash mechanisms. So that we saw an increase in, so in 2023, the majority of capital appropriations were cash financed, and only 41% were debt financed. But I'm happy to answer any calls on that.
Can you talk about what you expect on the trend, if I can anticipate Senator's question?
Yeah, so like with a trend, what we would probably describe as a good practice is to be countercyclical to the economy. So I think there's probably some unknowns right now in the current economic situation of the U.S. nationally and individual states. But as we maybe perhaps anticipate an economic slowdown, we expect debt financing to increase and cash, just because states still have the amount of cash and general fund flexibility that they had previously, we would expect debt financing to pick back up. And that's actually kind of a good practice because it's countercyclical to the economy. So if states, you can continue funding capital projects by borrowing during tough economic times, and then when good economic times return, and you have a surplus, it's much easier to finance with cash. And then we've also collected some information about how states are using capital appropriations. Again, I would expect a lot of variation given a project-dependent nature of capital outlays. So I would just call your attention to the bottom bar. That's new construction. You see a little bit of bouncing around with new construction. New construction in 2021 was the highest year, the only year that new construction was the majority of capital outlays for states. I think this kind of fits into another trend that we've heard, is that the states are starting to re-examine their facility needs, and it's not necessarily new buildings, but it's like renovating current buildings to meet the modern needs of education sector. So it could be like expanding lab space, it could be, I think more technology-based classrooms versus the old chalkboard and desks that I had when I was in college. So I think we're seeing a trend in renovations, not necessarily new building. I think the other component of this is a number of institutions have seen enrollment declines, so the need for residence halls is not what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Just to the chair, I think just one other question that I want to touch on. Did you find that other states are funding both public and private institutions via their financing?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So some states do have appropriations for private institutions. They tend to be very small. So what I'm presenting here is just data on public institutions. I'm happy to go full. We would just have like a total number of what states is spent for private or independent institutions. And it tends to be very small, nothing on the magnitude we see for public. So.
President, if I may, I'd love to, if you have that data.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be sure to send it to you all. And so I'm not talking a lot about process, but on the next slide, we did do a survey about 5 years ago that pulled out some of the key considerations of states consider, like how they allocate, like which projects are getting funded each year. The overwhelming majority of states indicated that institutions priority ranking, and that tends to be the starting point for a number of processes. And then it goes up to a state entity who reviews like all of the institution's priorities and then kind of creates a state priority list. But the one that I'm curious and would love to redo the survey is the one kind of at the bottom, the economic and workforce development. I think over the last 5 years, that topic has become much more prevalent in post-secondary education circles. And I'm curious if states are thinking about their own workforce development goals and like in trying to build in like especially the facilities needs that are needed to educate the current workforce. Kind of going back to what I was talking about a little bit ago, well, what does a modern classroom space need to look like? In some cases, it's still the traditional setup. In other cases, that there might need to be a lot more equipment for apprenticeships and the newer types of short-term credentials. So next, moving to deferred maintenance challenges. This is definitely not a new topic. It's been around for decades, and the research that I've looked into, this is at least the 5th decade that we've been talking about deferred maintenance challenges. It goes back to at least the 80s, and perhaps there could be references before that. There's a couple reasons for this. One, it's kind of like where there were construction booms in the higher education sector, and certainly coming out of the post-World War II population boom and rapid increase in enrollment in the 60s, like you see a number of campuses have buildings that were built in the 60s, early 70s. Now these facilities are now 60 to 70 years old now. Some of them are ending their lifespan, and others just need significant renovations. So you just see like many. So there's construction boom. Now 6 years later, we have a renovation challenge. Another factor. So EAB, a consulting firm who's looked into some deferred maintenance issues, they found that a third of buildings, about a third of higher education buildings have been constructed since 1995. And these newer buildings, while probably in better condition, they're more complex and they require frequent upgrades and tend to be more expensive.
What does that mean? I don't understand, but can you explain how, what's a more complex building? Are we talking about what it's built of, or the components?
Yeah, probably components, probably get into even like HVAC systems. I think you're talking, I'm not going to say that I'm a facilities expert. I'm happy to follow up and get it there.
It just seems counterintuitive that a newer building needs more updates.
Well, I think just the buildings themselves are more complex, and I think this could kind of also get into lab space, like what buildings are being used for. Again, they're not just like a classroom with desks and a chalkboard. Like what they're being used for is like far more complex. But I'm happy to get some more detail and follow up.
Yeah, be interested in that.
And Dustin, if I may, Andrew, will you come up? Can you address that a little bit for us? When you come up, you don't have to do it now. Thanks. Is that all right? Paul?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Next time I'll ask to speak.
No, I'll worry about it. I'm trying to get you the answer.
Okay, thanks.
No, but that's a very good question.
I have one other question since I'm jumping in here. So,
I'll put your mic on.
oh, sorry. So, the amount of money, I'm looking a little ahead here. The amount of money you're saying is going to be needed going forward, is that based on current enrollment, a projection of increased enrollment, a projection of decreased enrollment? How can you predict how institutions will be used in the future? Because I don't think enrollment has been going up lately, right?
No, the general trend has been downward, although there was a slight uptick this current year. But yeah, the general trend, especially if you look at demographic projections of traditional age students, is going downward. So I think you're probably referring to the $750, $950 billion backlog that Moody's has identified. My understanding of that is they're essentially estimating a stable enrollment, not necessarily projecting increases or decreases. It's more like what institutions need to address on their campuses to attract students. And I should say this is also for institutions that Moody's rates, so they tend to have higher level resources than some institutions. So it's probably actually underestimating the backlog that exists nationally across all institutions. So institutions that are not rated by Moody's, they don't have like a credit rating themselves, they're not included in this figure. And then probably because of less resources, will have even greater needs. But yeah, so I would say anticipate that number is just holding steady with what we anticipate to, the general trends to continue.
Thank you.
So I think another factor that's kind of impacted the deferred maintenance challenge across the United States is that during the Great Recession, state budgets, of course, were not very good, tough times for everybody. And when you also saw that also occurred with campus budgets, and I think maintenance kind of got pushed to the side and turned deferred during the Great Recession, coming out of the Great Recession for a number of years, so like there was become a significant impact like nationally. This is an issue that I think, excuse me, all of our states have indicated to us, all of our members have indicated to us that like, this is a challenge in their state. And one of the big challenges they have identified for us is there's a kind of a disagreement about who's responsible for deferred maintenance. Like, kind of, is it the institution that should have been maintaining their facilities, or does the state have an obligation? That can be a sticking point that prevents any conversations from happening to move forward with addressing the challenge.
So the ones that do it well, is there a standard format?
So I can kind of skip to that right now. I don't know if there's necessarily a standard format, but there's a couple of things that we have found, at least anecdotally, we haven't empirically adopted them. The first is that a handful of states have formulas that address maintenance, ongoing maintenance. And what we found is like they tend to have their backlog for maintenance is not as great, but it still exists. So even with the formula, not enough money has either flowed through it, or it wasn't like set up enough to deal with the challenges of that particular state. The other approach that we've heard has been very successful is states have started the conversation by working with a third party to come in and do a facilities assessment. And that kind of gets a common understanding of how large the problem is. So it's a third party, they're not vested, they haven't been involved in past conversations. They can come and say, here's where you're at here are your needs, this is what we estimate the cost to be. And that essentially gives a baseline starting point that you can start to chip away at that plug. And you kind of go back to the point of the previous slide, like who's to blame for this problem, you kind of get past that step and are able to move forward. I think another step that's kind of followed that initial third-party assessment is creating this task force or study committee that identifies the greatest needs on each campus. And then finally, this has become a greater part of what we've heard is that rather than fixing up facilities, kind of going back to the Roman question, states are now demolishing facilities that they simply don't need anymore. Or pass that on. And then just a few final comments. These are kind of coming from conversations and surveys we've done with our members. There's great interest at the state level in making this process, the capital appropriations process orderly and establishing priorities that align with the state's goals. As kind of, what I was going back, it's going to go back to feed into like workforce development goals. The number of states have created attainment goals. I think now we've kind of reached the point where we're moving on. It's not just attainment, but like attainment for good jobs. Another common factor that we've seen across our membership is that while some states might do capital appropriations, they think they have a good process in place, the amount of money that's flowing through the process is not enough. And like that's very consistent across our membership. Like everybody says like we don't have enough to address our needs. And then I think just kind of like being able to address that challenge of how you define deferred maintenance, because they could be, like, again, don't want to get into a blame game. And really just like being able to answer that question early on and move to addressing the challenges that your state faces. And then finally, just kind of picking up, I think one of the things I've hinted at already is the capital needs in the future may be very different than capital needs in the past. And I think what the facilities you need facilities to look like the future may not be what they were in the past. It could be you need more lab space, you need more hands-on experiential learning space that is not necessarily the traditional classroom. I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Anybody have any questions for Justin?
If one were to have a third party come in to determine what your needs are, is there a standard or metrics or some ideal that is used to determine what you need? Or is it just what that third party thinks you need? I'm not sure how we get an independent third party come in and tell us what we need. Because I mean, you could have a third party come in here and we could ask them what we need in this to conduct a hearing, and someone might come in and say we need, like, you know, 85-inch screens up there and over here, and we may need, all kinds of other things, but whose metrics are we using, standards are we using to determine what's appropriate?
Yeah, again, I'm not a facilities expert, but I'm sure maybe some other folks who are going to testify can speak to this better than I perhaps can, but my understanding is that there are common standards among people who do sort of facilities assessments, who can come in and say, and I think really what you're talking about is conditioned facilities like HVAC systems, like crumbling, like mold buildings, walkways that aren't ADA compliant, like those sorts of things that.
Yeah, those all make
Yeah,
sense, yeah.
And that's my understanding, that's where those.
And will you get back to us on the previous question I had at some point, because I'm not sure if somebody, if I was trying to defend, some of this, and to be able to say to someone, well, newer buildings, they need actually more funding and more updates, and they would say to me, why is that? I don't think, based on the answer I got today, that I'd be able to give them an educated answer to anyone that they would say, oh yeah, I get it.
Yes, I'll absolutely follow up on that.
Thank you.
And also in a few minutes, I think we're going to hear from one of the groups where the tab is 260 million. So just from some of the asking, so I think we'll find some numbers out as well. Thank you, Senator, for that. Does anybody have anything else for Dustin? Any other questions? I'm going to say a tremendous thank you for putting this in perspective for us. Much appreciated. Also going to let you off the hook and ask you to step back and ask Andrew to come on up. Okay. Cheryl, please. Sorry, I got you waiting. And, wait, Andrew, you're with, I apologize. I apologize. Ed, do you want to join Cheryl? Because I'm
You don't mind, Senator.
I'm sorry. Andrew, I can't wait to hear you. Just be a moment or two, okay? Thank you. I think this makes more sense, right? So, thanks, guys. All right, Cheryl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Cheryl Stitt, Executive Director of the New Jersey Educational Facilities Authority, and now you know who he is. Ed Filia. He is the authority's Senior Communications and Legislative Affairs Manager. Mr. Chairman, I enjoyed meeting with you several months ago, and really appreciate the invitation to be here today. My remarks will be very big picture and more broadly use the authority for those that don't have an in-depth understanding of what we do. I'll talk about our role in supporting higher education in New Jersey, but I'd ask that you please keep in mind that I cannot speak for the administration, especially in matters of policy. So with that, we've been around a long time. We were created in 1966 when the legislature at that time declared that there was a serious public emergency that existed affecting and threatening the welfare and the prosperity of the people of the state. From the fact that financial resources were lacking with which to construct required dorms and other educational facilities at public and private institutions of higher education. Since then, the authority has completed over 500 transactions with a total value of nearly $21 billion. And I am very proud to say we have done that without a single payment default by any of our colleges or university borrowers. The agency is entirely self-supporting. And by that, what I mean is that we sustain our operations through fees that are paid by our borrowing institutions on transactions that are facilitated by the authority. The authority employs a small and highly skilled staff with expertise in public finance, with specialty in higher education finance, state government operations, and compliance expertise with state law and federal tax law, among others. We are located structurally in but not of Treasury, and the authority, as an independent agency, is governed by a 7-member board, 5 public members that are appointed by the governor with advice and consent of the Senate, and 2 ex officio members that comprise the state treasurer and the secretary of higher education. The authority supports the preservation and development of higher education infrastructure in the state, as you know, primarily by providing institutions with access to the capital markets for low-cost financing for their projects. These standalone transactions are bonds that are issued or other financial instruments that are executed by the authority and do not constitute an obligation of or debt incurred by the state. The obligor is the respective borrowing institution, which has the sole responsibility to pay back the bonds or debt. Essentially, investors are looking to the creditworthiness of the public or private university that is issuing the bonds through the authority and is not looking to the state to repay those obligations. The authority also issues state-supported bonds to finance and administer 4 state grant programs for various purposes and fund state and institutional investment in higher education infrastructure. These grant programs, and I know that you are familiar with them to some degree, are the Higher Education Capital Improvement Fund, or SIF, under which public colleges pay 1/3 of the debt service on the bonds, and private colleges pay half of the debt service. And statutorily, for the SIF program, our county colleges do not participate. Higher Education Facilities Trust Fund is the next, and that does not require a match or share of debt service. The Higher Education Technology Infrastructure Fund requires colleges to have a 1-to-1 match to their grants. And then lastly, the Higher Education Equipment Leasing Fund, under this program, the colleges pay 25% of the debt service. So these state-supported bond-funded grant programs were established by the legislature in the 90s and 2000. And they were created, they are revolving financing mechanisms to fund the preservation, renewal, and construction of facilities, the purchase of equipment, and development of technology infrastructure at our institutions. The statutes authorizing each of these programs set forth a maximum principal amount of bonds that may be outstanding at any one time. As bonds are paid off, new bonding capacity becomes available to fund new grants, subject to approval by the state treasurer and the secretary and issuance of bonds by the authority. This is a statutory revolving mechanism that provides the opportunity for new investment in capital facilities through new grant cycles or solicitations. The authority's statutory and regulatory role in the grant process includes the issuance of bonds pursuant to a state contract with the state treasurer, participating in the grant review committee, investing the bond proceeds, and managing the requisition and grant fund disbursement process for the grantees. Under a separate memorandum of understanding with the Secretary of Higher Ed, the authority also plays a role in the solicitation process, including providing technical support to the application development and intake process and updates to the regulations. Since creation of the programs, there have been several cycles or solicitations, which in the aggregate have totaled approximately $2.8 billion in bonds issued, of which approximately $2.1 billion has funded grants for state investment in higher education infrastructure, while about $700 million has been for refunding issuance for debt service savings for the state and the institutions on the programs that they pay a share of debt service on. Generally, a competitive grant cycle consists of a solicitation program. A review committee then evaluates and scores the applications and makes a recommendation to the Secretary of Higher Education. Once a solicitation and application review process has culminated in a list of approved grant projects and grant amounts by the Secretary of Higher Education, the SIF and HEF programs, the Secretary provides a written certification of the approval of the grants, including the approved amount to the authority and to the legislature. If the legislature does not approve, if the legislature does not disapprove a grant by the adoption of a concurrent resolution within 45 days for SIF and 60 days for HEFT, the grant then is deemed approved. For the HEDI and ELF programs, the Secretary provides a written certification of preliminary approval of each grant, including the amount to the authority. And it's the authority then that submits this to the Joint Budget and Oversight Committee for its review and approval. If JBOC does not approve within 10 days, then the grant is deemed approved. After legislative or JBOC approval, the authority, again pursuant to that contract with the state treasurer, issues the bonds to fund the grants. Successful grant applicants enter into grant release agreements then with the authority or the secretary as appropriate, funding in is then provided to colleges on a reimbursement basis. Once grant projects commence, the authority serves in a critical gatekeeper role in collaboration with the Office of the Secretary. We review every requisition for funds, identify and resolve discrepancies that may occur. We ensure compliance with state law and federal tax law. We manage reporting obligations and ultimately authorize disbursement of funds to institutions for reimbursement of project costs. Looking across the landscape of higher education in New Jersey, and based on our many conversations with our college and university clients, we recognize, as we just heard from Shio, that there is a substantial and growing need for resources to address the physical plants of our institutions, particularly in the area of deferred maintenance. I know you're going to hear more expertise on those points, but I do just want to say that we are very proud of our 60-year history of supporting higher education, and we continue to be committed to helping solve the problems.
Anybody? A couple quick ones. Length of the average grant or loan, is there specific time periods?
It varies by program. And if you mean length of construction,
No, length of the loan, for lack of a better way. How long to pay back?
well, it depends. All 4 programs have different maturity schedules.
Okay.
So, you have SIF, which I believe is 30 years. You have ELF and HEDI, which I believe is 10 and 15 years respectively. I'd have to check that, but
I
so.
think you're all right. There's heads nodding behind you saying yes.
I got it right. And so, it depends. Obviously, equipment leasing, where the maturity schedule on the bonds is shorter, is going to be paid off quicker. There's going to be a shorter useful life of those projects or equipment, and so the pay schedule is going to match up with that.
Just a quick question on the 10 days from JBOC. So if JBOC doesn't meet, it's approved and it goes. I suspect that helps things in the enormous potential.
Potentially.
Any other members have questions? All right, let me ask Cheryl. All right, so the 300 million that everybody wants. All right, so you know the deal, right? Like, I'm not hiding anything here. So can you put that in context for us and just kind of give us an oversight on it? Because we might as well have that chat here.
To the extent that I can. So
Yeah.
what I can say is that, that 300+ million number that we've been hearing a lot about
Right.
really is a December 31st, 24 number. We are relooking at those numbers now. We know there will be some growth in those numbers, and that's as a result of the refunding that closed, we've already closed in the first quarter of this year. And so, as we speak, we are updating those numbers, and through the chair, we will get you the updated numbers. But, going with the the December 24 numbers, 311 million, that is as of September 25. And that date is because that's the date the debt service payments are made, and a portion of the principal of the bonds is paid down. That grows to about 367 million within a year, September 26. So again, those numbers are going to be updated. They're old and shortly.
So is there an availability for that money to be pooled or available for capital use? And obviously, as you know, we've gotten a number of requests to apply that money as quickly as this June, once we can. Comments to that, or just give us some oversight?
In the time that I've been with the authority, I have seen, in terms of trends, these programs recycle 7 to 8 years. And, I think they have recycled because the critical mass has been reached to make the process of solicitation something that will, bear a reasonable size solicitation. I mean, they have been issued in under 7 to 8 years, but that cyclicality is the trend that I see every 7 to 8 years.
So what we're talking about here are remaining balances, right? That's essentially what we're doing from the previous debt issue, is that correct?
So that is capacity that is available now. If we were to issue bonds, with the caveat that the number is going to change,
Gotcha.
okay? If we were to issue bonds today, that is the amount of capacity. We could issue bonds up to that cap, and we couldn't go over it. So, and we couldn't go over it because of the statutory caps that I referenced earlier.
So in theory, okay, understanding that it's a fluid, moving target, we're talking about September 26th, we could potentially be talking about a bond issue for capital improvements of $367
26.
in September 26th. Right, just to apples, so I have it
Yes.
right. Okay. So given, one of the things this committee worries about and speaks about is the amount of debt load that New Jersey's institutions carry. What do you see on the bond market as a result of the fact that we generally carry more than other states? Do you see anything or any impact that you're aware of in your capacity?
Well, there is an impact, on institutions that carry high debt loads, and that impact can, be seen and felt first and foremost on the credit of the institution. It can impact access to capital markets.
Okay.
And, besides access to the capital markets, what the wealthier institutions, those that are well-resourced, are going to have an easier time in handling things like deferred maintenance than other, smaller, less resourced institutions.
It's one of the challenges of the committee. To simplify it, there's haves and have-nots, and getting that equitable balance is going to be a challenge.
That's right.
Last for me is I just wanted to ask if you could, not here and now, but if you could provide us a list of what debt you carry by institution for the members of the committee. Any other committee members have questions?
Just one question, Chair. That 312, is that private and public or just public?
It's both,
Oh,
and county, but it depends on the program. So that 311 or 312 is the aggregate of all 4 programs.
gotcha.
And as I said, SIF, the county colleges don't participate, but both the publics and the privates participate or can participate in all 4 programs, the 4-year program.
Any other questions? Can't say thanks enough, Ed, you were great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it today for you.
Thank you both very, very much. Appreciate it. If I had a drum, I'd actually do a drum roll now, Andrew. All right, but come on up, and thank you very much for joining us today. Just as a reminder, Andrew is the Senior VP of Real Estate Development and Capital Operations at NJIT. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Chairperson Crine, Vice Chair Zwicker, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on an issue critical to the long-term strength and competitiveness of New Jersey's higher education system, the growing crisis of deferred maintenance. This is not just a facilities issue, it's a strategic, financial, and student success imperative that impacts every institution's ability to fulfill its mission. Again, my name is Andrew Chris, and I serve my alma mater, NJIT, as Senior Vice President for Real Estate Development and Capital Operations for the past 11 years. I bring over 30 years of experience in infrastructure, construction, and facilities leadership, beginning in 1992 with early career roles in civil infrastructure, automotive, and pharmaceutical sectors. Since entering higher education in 2005 at Georgia Court University, where I had the pleasure of working with Senator Singer when he was on the board of trustees there, I have focused on managing and modernizing campus environments to support institutional growth and mission delivery. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and a member of the National Academy of Construction. I also serve as the president of NJ-APA, the New Jersey chapter of APA, Leadership in Educational Facilities, a professional association that defines the standards and best practices for capital planning and facility stewardship in higher education. Across higher education, institutions develop infrastructure and reinvestment plans through a combination of condition assessment, benchmarking, and space utilization analysis. Generally, this begins with a comprehensive review of our physical assets, evaluating the age, the functionality, and the risk profile of systems such as HVAC, electrical, plumbing, roofing, fire protection, and others. These evaluations inform our Facilities Condition Index, or FCI, which quantifies the ratio of needed repairs to the replacement value, providing a data-driven basis for planning. To guide long-term reinvestment strategy, institutions partner with firms like Gordian, a nationally recognized firm specializing in life cycle capital planning. Through these partnerships, we benchmark our facility portfolios against national standards and receive objective insights into what level of annual investment is necessary to meaningfully address deferred maintenance and preserve the value of our physical assets. The numbers are stark. According to Gordian, using my home institution, NJIT, as an example, we should be investing $46 to $89 million annually to stay ahead of facilities needs. We are currently able to invest only $15 million. To close the gap with tuition alone would require a 15% increase, something we cannot ask of our students. This illustrates the structural nature of the funding challenge and the critical need for targeted state support. Each year, more building components reach the end of their service life. If we're unable to keep pace, our backlog will grow, no matter how efficiently we allocate existing funds. As institutions continue to expand to meet academic, research, and enrollment demands, even our newest buildings will eventually require reinvestment. Responsible capital planning looks at not just what's broken, but what is also what is aging, and how to avoid tomorrow's emergencies with today's planning. Beyond asset condition, we also conduct detailed space utilization studies, incorporating traditional room usage data with new technologies like sensor-based occupancy tracking. These tools help us understand which spaces are being underused or used inefficiently and guide decisions about renovation, repurposing, or consolidation. These insights feed directly into our facility master plans at every institution in the state and nationally. We use a prioritization framework conditioned with national best practices, beginning with life safety and code compliance, followed by academic and research continuity, energy efficiency and sustainability, student experience, accessibility, and cost escalation risk. This allows institutions to allocate limited resources to the highest impact projects while keeping long-term institutional needs in view. APA has long emphasized the importance of this integrated, data-informed approach to capital planning, and we follow it closely. But even the most well-structured capital plan is vulnerable to financial risk if deferred maintenance is allowed to accumulate. Moody's Investor Service, as the gentleman presented earlier, has identified deferred maintenance as a material credit risk, particularly for public institutions with aging facilities and limited access to flexible capital. Deferred repairs increase operating costs, drive emergency response spending, and reduce borrowing capacity. For many public higher education institutions, deferred maintenance backlogs are now well into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Without additional investment, gains in facility condition and operating stability are likely to plateau, and the backlog will continue to grow as more systems reach the end of their useful life. The impact is not just financial, it's human. Deferred maintenance affects the students, faculty, and staff who rely on safe, functional, and inspiring environments to teach, learn, and discover. Today's students expect modern labs, collaborative classrooms, and residence halls that reflect the quality of their academic programs. Studies from sources like the Chronicle of Higher Education confirm that students and families strongly consider campus condition when choosing a college. Facilities are a visible and lasting symbol of institutional commitment, and they have a direct impact on recruitment and retention, which will help keep and attract the best and brightest students to achieve their higher education goals here in New Jersey. While instructional models continue to evolve with a greater emphasis on hybrid and online delivery, the physical campus remains essential, not only as a place of learning, but as a foundation for institutional identity, student engagement, and community building. In closing, deferred maintenance is not just a facilities issue. It is a strategic challenge that impacts the physical health, academic mission, and long-term viability of higher education institutions in New Jersey. Institutions across the state are working diligently to manage their resources and plan responsibly, but the scale of the need far exceeds current funding capacity. We respectfully urge this committee to prioritize predictable, sustained, and targeted capital investment in New Jersey's colleges and universities. Without it, we risk compromising the quality and safety and affordability of our campuses, foundations of our state's future workforce, and economic competitiveness. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I welcome your questions.
Well, you put it in perspective for us, Andrew. Thank you. I have a couple for you, just real quick. So Senator Singer had talked about, and I think Senator Moriarty as well. So reputable third-party appraisers, it sounds like Gordian and others are the kind of folks that one would bring in.
Yes, there are many reputable companies out there that do this work. Mostly they're engineering firms, architects. They have a kind of a mix of different disciplines.
They know how to do it.
They know how to do it.
Okay,
Yes.
second question for you here is, can you help me with space utilization rate? You know, one of the things I did notice from a previous life in the assembly was there was much new construction with low utilization rates. Is there an industry standard, like you have to be at 85 when you use the classroom space in order to consider it? Are there specific metrics to that?
There are metrics. Many of the metrics are published by SCUP, the Society for Campus College and University Planning. They have some standard metrics around the utilization of classrooms, station seat occupancy, which is the number of actual students in a seat in a particular room. So you may schedule a room 60% of the time, but if it's a 30-person classroom and only 15 seats occupied, your station seat occupancy is only 50%. So there are standards around both the scheduling of the specific spaces and the amount of people that are actually in them. And that's why I mentioned using not only the data that you collect from the registrar and others to calculate that, but also we've used sensors, deploying sensors all around the campus to understand. Some colleges and universities use their Wi-Fi network to understand that as well. So using more data, more real-time information to be able to make those decisions.
That's interesting with the sensors. Last for me, you've been around a couple blocks here in New Jersey. So if you were sitting where we were, what funding source would you use?
I think for me, I emphasize it at the end of my remarks, is predictable and sustainable.
Oh, I heard that part.
Yeah, so for people that sit in the seat that I have, having the ability to know that in a few years that I will have $15, $20, $50 million available to me, so that I can prioritize and understand what are the biggest impact projects that we can try and effectuate. So what has happened in state higher education and the funding, and my colleagues at EFA have been wonderful, and the programs that they've administered have been extremely helpful to all of us. But having something that happens on a more consistent basis is truly important to colleagues of mine.
I'll let you have the hope, but it's safe to say lottery tickets aren't the answer. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
I do. Sure. Good seeing you. Has there been any uses of third parties coming in, knocking buildings down, building them and leasing them back to the university?
I think there have been across the state. I mean, public-private partnerships are, yeah, I mean, NJIT did a public-private partnership for residence hall. There have been many other institutions in the state that have taken advantage of that. It's not a panacea, but it certainly is a way, an alternative delivery method to help us all get the type of facilities that we need. We've done things like leasing space. We've taken research space at the Nest campus in Kenilworth to expand our research capabilities. So things like that are helpful, but the critical factor is what is addressing the buildings that we already have and living in a sustainable way, investing in the facilities that already exist is the least impactful from a climate change perspective. So making the old facilities new again, which back in the 2015 bond cycle, we were able to do that with a building that was built in the 60s. Reset the useful life of that facility by making the investments, and now it'll be a quality facility for the next 50 years.
Thank you.
Andrew, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You were worth the wait. We're going to ask Jennifer. Jenny, you want to come up? And Dave, is Dave and Steve coming up with you? I see you guys. I see you and Jay. Who's talking?
I'm a little involved.
All right. Sure.
I just need a copy of my testimony.
It's 45 away. All right, I'm sorry. So that was a deferred maintenance hearing. We're now going to hear on the bill itself, even though it's for discussion, just to bring it to closure. My apologies. All right. Thanks, Beth. Okay.
And in good news, I'm going to sort of hopefully provide a little bit of a segue there, because my testimony is very long. I promise I will not read from it and try to hit some very important points throughout. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, obviously, on the legislation. Chairman, thank you for taking this on as an issue. Committee, thank you for listening to all of the folks that have spoken before me, as well as the ones that will come after. We do have a critical issue in New Jersey related to deferred maintenance. And you've heard me banging this drum for a while. I'm happy to have this conversation because it gives us both a sense of what the scope of what other states are doing, as well as what we may be able to do ourselves. I'm going to try to walk us through that as quickly as possible. But I start first with why. You know, one of our biggest actual exports in New Jersey is our students. We lose about 27,000 students a year to other jurisdictions. And about 30% of them will return at a certain point, and that's great. But the other 70 won't. So that's lost opportunity. In essence, we know that for every dollar we invest, we gain about 16 million, or excuse me, for every $1 million we invest, we gain about 16 million in economic impact. When you look at that from the standpoint of students across the board, that becomes an even larger number. But let's do the math. So in essence, if you're losing about 27,000 students, and it costs us about $20,000 to educate them on an annual basis in terms of state aid, and then we kind of project that over the entire course of their student careers, K-12 and 12. That works out to about $246,000. When you do that for the number that we're talking about, it's about $6.8 billion. So that's $6.8 billion that leaves our shores, of which a small portion they return. That's just the direct economic impact. We've certainly had the conversations before about the larger economic impact in terms of loss of innovation. And I will not digress given the amount of time and everybody's attention span. What I do want to talk about is why students are leaving. Obviously, it's geography. We live within 3 hours of lots of different states, right? But it's beyond that. It's also about the ability to put our best foot forward as a sector. A 2015 survey commissioned by the Association of University Directors of States actually found that 67% of students considered facilities a crucial part of their university decision-making process. That was more than the 47% who prioritized the institution's reputation. They're looking at the facilities that they're visiting. And as it relates to facilities, you've heard from Andrew as well as nationally. In particular, we're just not competitive. We're only one of 6 states that doesn't have an annual form of investment. And it shows. It shows in our ability to not just put our best foot forward, but it's also affecting our ability to, in essence, be competitive. In short, we're leveraging the money that we have to plug the holes and address the emergency repairs, as Andrew indicated. And so the real deferred maintenance, the ability to make good and move forward beyond just the emergency items, just isn't happening, and it affects us competitively. Moreover, it also makes us more financially fragile than similarly situated entities in other jurisdictions. And that impacts our ability to borrow and improve our facilities and return. You've heard the statistic from me before. Just across the Nebraska institutions, we're looking at about $293 million in deferred maintenance items. I included a copy of what those things are. They are certainly not the most sexy, but they're nonetheless really critical. They're things like roofs, fire safety systems, heating and cooling, and in essence, they make us significantly less competitive when we're actually comparing to, say, an institution that has air conditioning works, or has a system that has temperature controlled and appropriate things. What that means, forgive me, that's just for the adjustment institutions. When you look at the entire system, that number grows, for senior public, that grows to $813 million in deferred maintenance needs. That is an incredibly large sum. So, what are other states doing? We talked a little bit about this. I know Dustin did a great job talking about some of the trends. As Moody's indicates, there's about $750 to $950 million in deferred maintenance across the entire, billion across the entire nation. One thing that I think is really important to talk about from a Moody's perspective is that you need to be looking at multiple forms of support. And that's part of what we're doing today, hopefully, is talking about what we do, which is the EFA programs, as well as what we could do going forward to address the individual nuts that need to be. So, I also had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Jeremy Wright-Kim, and I would love for his study to be done already. He's actually doing some work right now at the University of Michigan around deferred maintenance and capital needs across the entire nation. He's doing kind of a longitudinal study of that, looking at the sources, distribution, and impact of capital funding in higher education and institutional and student success. He wasn't able to obviously have a finalized study in December, as much as I wanted him to, but he did give me a couple of important points to think about and to kind of drive this conversation going forward. And I would love to have him in the future to talk about his research, because I do think it's going to be truly dispositive as we have additional conversation. You've heard from some of the folks, including Shio, around how we're financing. It's both general obligation bonds and revenue and special obligation bonds on the kind of debt financing side, but states are also cash financing. And I, in a few minutes, talk about some of the other options that could be considered. There's a range in terms of the match that's required, from 0 to 50%. Some states have better, more vetted rubrics, which I know Senator Moriarty is looking for in terms of specificity, where they're outlining specifics around the types of projects that are eligible or what the focus needs to be. New Jersey's programs already have a little bit of that because we have the statutory framework and then we add in additional elements by way of the regulations. The last round of OSHA grants just did that. Moody's analysis also gave me a couple insights into, in essence, if you will, forgive me, I lost my place, what other states are doing this really well. In particular, they focused on both Florida, Virginia, and Washington as the most generous providers of capital support across the nation. What they consider is really the frequency as well as the consistency that's seen in those individual states. Other states included Connecticut, Indiana, and Utah as ones that were covering debt service. So they're not necessarily addressing the underlying project, the actual nut of the project, but in essence helping subsidize some of the debt as a way to try to address some of these individual items. Moving on to dedicated funding sources, Dr. Wright-Kim's data was particularly helpful in terms of giving us a sense of where money's coming from with cash finance. Florida is leveraging some of their motor vehicle tax revenues. I don't necessarily recommend that. We use that for other purposes. Massachusetts actually recently passed an amendment for a surtax on incomes above $1 million. They call it the Fair Share Fund to support public education and other state needs. Nevada is using gaming and slot taxes, interestingly. And states in the West are using mineral right items. In the end, the question is ultimately whether we want to prioritize this in comparison to the other things that we do and often have to prioritize. But I will say the lost opportunity here in terms of our students makes it something we really need to do now. One state that in particular Moody's talked about as well as Dr. Wright-Kim was Massachusetts in terms of setting up an individual program on an annual basis. I include in my actual presentation kind of their formula that they use. They have about 675,000, not a whole lot, but it's a decent amount baseline that goes to the 29 institutions on an annual basis to address deferred maintenance needs, and will continue to do that. But they have a methodology that they've set up. Other states that you could look at in terms of individual programs include Georgia, Kansas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and even Maryland, who has really done some interesting things in recent years. So, with that, I'm going to talk specifically about New Jersey's legislation before us today. First, some background. We already collect this data. We do it by way of the Commission on Capital Planning report that goes out on an annual basis based on input that is provided by all of our schools. I actually included a copy of the 7-year lookout in terms of their summary of both capital requests and recommendations. As you can see, it looks very tiny in print. Their recommendations was significantly less than what was actually requested, and that's been a perennial problem. When you talk about the capital needs across the entire sector, it's in the billions. But as to the legislation, given what we know already, and given the fact that we're already collecting some of this data, in addition to the data being provided to OSHI and in essence Treasury by way of the Capital Commission report, consider also being part of that conversation, because then you're able to be part of the active, ongoing conversation around what is needed and what can we do and what the amounts are that and ultimately need to be addressed. We're also curious about the departure on support between county colleges and the senior public institutions, particularly when county colleges also have a sustained support option through county government, and would look to work with you in terms of potentially addressing really the parity between the two environments. And that ultimately, in essence, at least the senior publics are state instrumentalities. They are an extension of the state, and they operate underneath our auspices, so we need to be able to, in essence, support them appropriately. Finally, I will turn to dedicated funding solution. You all know I worked at Treasury in my prior life. I would love to say that there's lots of cushion or coins underneath the cushion. There aren't. But there are a couple things that we can maybe think about from a new economy perspective. In essence, and there was a report that was done in 2023 that looked at some of these, and looked at anything from digital streaming, which would produce about 75 million to 150 million on an annual basis. You can actually make that a little less regressive by, in essence, tying it to, if you will, the type of streaming that you're doing.
I appreciate the suggestion. We have the details in the comments.
So the other thing I would just add is whether you're looking at streaming, iCloud computing, or you're looking at digital ad revenue, know that we do need to come up with something more substantial going forward. These are but 3 ideas. I think there may be others out there, but coming up with a sustained form of support will make a difference to our schools and make us more competitive going forward. With that, I will turn it over.
First and foremost, let me say thanks, Jen.
No
For
problem.
the specifics and the overview. Very much appreciate it. I have one quick question.
Sure.
I can't help but notice, if my math is correct, that of the 263 million of your members, that NJCU by itself has 27% of that. So can we also reasonably infer that where we see growing deferred maintenance, we might have to take a look at this committee's got more work to do in terms of merger.
Absolutely. And what I would say is, depending on what the future holds, and certainly even within the existing financing programs, you can structure your aid based on, and the directions you're taking based on priorities that you set. SIF, HEFT, HEDI, and ELF has a framework that talks about and could be used for deferred maintenance, but the regs informed very robustly what happened several years ago. You could do that here, and you could do that also in terms of saying what the function or purpose is, and differentiating between needs and expectations based on the future of the institution.
That's helpful. Thank you, Jim. David? Dave, Steve?
Can I just say, through the chair. First of all, I want to thank the chair who's really looking at private institutions in this legislation. Your comment, one thing I just have to respond to one of your comments concerning the outflow of 27,000 students a year from New Jersey institutions. I think when we look at that and discuss that and we talk about it, it's more of a comprehensive problem than just the institution. It's the surrounding community of the institution. I have parents come to me and say, I went to see that one of the institutions, and it's very fine, but excuse me, the neighborhood, I don't feel that my child is safe. So I kind of think that we have to take a more broader approach to some of these institutions and say, how do we get EDA involved to make that whole area more conducive for students to want to go there, to make it more user-friendly, as you see in many institutions outside of the university that I've seen. So just a thought.
Thank you, Senator. Dave?
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm joined today by Steve Reynolds, our President and CEO of the organization.
Dave, you get the deal. Tell us what you want.
As you can guess, we're here, we're here to express our disappointment that we're not included in the bill right now. We have the same exact needs that you've heard that Jen has done a great job of it. Our students and our faculty and our families, our taxpayers of the state of New Jersey, and should receive, equivalent in quotes, that they have all the needs. Remember, most of our institutions are much older than all of the public institutions except for Rutgers, excuse me. And that, so you can imagine the needs that's there. So I mean, that's just, as you move forward, clearly, our schools have the need. You've been on some of the campuses. It's just we need it, and we need we need it, and it's as far as Jen made a perfect example. EFA with a rewrite of the regs could probably get a couple $100 million out in 6 months to a year. Not even waiting until next. Let's not even wait until next. Don't wait until next September 26th when they're that. There's money now. That may fill the gap until you get a chance to have some dedicated funding source going for it. Now, we're taking a different tack. Because you may ask me this question. So the one thing that you guys have talked about is predictable. Remember, there is no predictability. Unless you're willing to put it in the Constitution, there's no way you can guarantee that any funding source you come up with is going to be there. It might be there 1 year, and it's not going to be there another. Most of you know that we can't. And the other problem is, within the EFA programs that they have, because of the 2008 constitutional question that limits the offering of debt, we can't even make any changes to those without going to the voters. A lot of we have to go to the voters for anything capital. So that's one. That's my major case as you go forward, and so.
You make it privately and publicly very well. Steve, anything to add? Nothing to add. Anybody, anything? It's much appreciated. I'm very grateful for this. I think we have potentially up to 3 more in this issue. This is on the bill, and we'll move. Nathaniel? Okay. Keith? Yeah, Keith. Keith White, I should probably do last names here, right? Nathaniel, is it Saviat? Did I say it correctly?
Yes, sir.
Saviat, Keith White, and Gene, I got your sheet, but no testimony necessary. So you guys are going to finish it out. Give us a perspective. Give us what the bill itself is written for the conversation. Okay, to be candid. So you follow me here. So tell me what you need and tell the committee what it is.
Sure. All right. I'm Nathaniel Saviat. I'm the Vice President of Facilities at Bergen Community College. So we at the college finished our facility condition assessment in late 2023, and we identified over $66 million of deferred maintenance. Half of that is money that should go towards currently or potentially critical projects, $33 million. The majority of the college's facilities are over 40 years old without any meaningful significant renovation or restoration. Our facilities, as many have discussed, are conduits to our education. Deferred maintenance is beyond an inconvenience or a distraction for Bergen. It's an ongoing safety and health risk. A catastrophic failure is ever present and can occur at any time. We support critical fire protection and life safety systems, fire suppression and sprinkler systems, fire alarms, fresh air systems, carbon monoxide alarms, emergency lighting and egress, and many more systems that are not optional or are grandfathered in and no longer aligned with current code. It is important that we maintain these systems. The fatal Bowling Hall fire at Seton Hall in 2000 highlighted the importance of fire suppression systems. New Jersey was quick to act and required fire sprinkler systems in all dormitories. If those systems were installed in 2000, most of those components are now beyond their usable life. Bergen has systems older than those systems that might have been installed after the Bowling Hall fire. Many of our systems require replacement. Parts are simply no longer available or scarce, and eventually vendors no longer support them. False, and beyond that, false alarms from failed smoke detectors and fire systems evacuate entire buildings and grind our operations to a halt. So this bill and this work is critical to the stewardship of our higher ed facilities. It will allow colleges like Bergen to do so much more for our students and communities. It's a common sense investment in supporting higher education, as well as the safety, health, and well-being of our facilities. Passing this bill will address an urgent and undeniable need, and delaying action, as you've heard, will only prolong and exacerbate the cost, expense, and time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Good.
First of all, how much dorming do you have at your community college?
Bergen Community College has no dorms.
That's completely true. Discussion. Second of all, what does your county give you each year?
We receive the most of any, $4 million.
So maybe we should change the law, they can give you a lot more money. Would that help?
I believe the county has funding problems of their own.
Well, then maybe you better commissioner something. But what I'm just saying is that we certainly should take a look at that, because are they able to give you more, or just won't give you more?
I believe Bergen County provides the most funding for any community college of all the counties in the state.
I don't think so.
For their community college, I believe that's correct.
Okay, well, I'm not sure about that, because I'm involved with Ocean County Community College. We're doing a lot of projects there, millions with folk school. Many millions, far more than more. Okay, so but part of it is that's the max they're allowed to give you the $4 million, or can they give you more?
That I am unsure. I'm not sure how the legislation is written. We roughly get $4 million of capital funding a year.
Mr. Chairman, can we have our staff look at that? I think there's some restrictions as to what counties can give community colleges, and maybe we have to increase that or make it more flexible.
Yes, the answer to that's yes. I mean, the 66 mil number. takes
Yeah,
the
that's-
breath away, so.
Yeah, $4 million won't get us.
Thank you.
All right, Keith, big moment.
Legislative Center. Thank you, Chair Bryan, Vice Chair Whitaker, Senator Singer, Senator Moriarty. I'm Keith Barrett, Chief of Staff of Montclair State University, and President sends his regrets as his son is graduating high school, so no offense, chose his son over you. Montclair, we think we've been great stewards of our campus. We have a beautiful campus for those of you who come visit. It's a recruitment tool for both students, faculty, and staff alike. Over the past 10 years, we've renovated or built, 15 years, we've renovated or rebuilt about 10 buildings. Right now, we have about 5 million square feet, with about $3 billion in value. But despite all that, and spending $7.5 million a year in cash to maintain our campus for renewal or repair, we still have about $70 million in deferred maintenance, which, granted, it's not far when we look at the valuation. It's about 2.3% of valuation. As we're looking forward, we view this as a real economic issue for the state of New Jersey. Our ability to provide students and staff the ability to create an educational environment that's going to create a competitive workforce. The facilities are a key component of that. You've heard this already with regards to technology, labs, and just an environment where people are happy, residence halls. So given that we've done so much building, the predictability is going to be very important regarding the funding source, because in about 5 years, our deferred maintenance annually will go up by an additional $11 million as these newer buildings from the past 15 years start to reach a point where the systems that they've talked about, computers, HVAC, labs, et cetera, all start to require the regular maintenance that's been referenced in response to Senator Moriarty's questions. So when we look at those things, the predictability and the importance of that is critical. Specifically with regards to the draft legislation, we request that you expand or look at the definition of maintenance. It's a very, if you look at the dictionary definition, it's going to be very specific, but we think it should be looked at, expanded to include renovations and expansions, because you can put off something because you just don't have money to do it, because you have need, whether it's rebuilding our healthcare center to have greater expansion for the number of students that need help, or so there's more offices and the like. So we just think that's an important thing that we're going to do. So I defer to the chair.
Yeah, we're going to do that. It makes sense. Thank you, especially as anybody have any questions for these guys? 66 million right out of Bergen. You have the number of the day. I'll say it.
I'm sorry, what's that?
You have the number of the day. But it strikes me though that next to you is 7. You know,
Our number is over 10 years, so 33 million of that, half of that is what's been identified as needed over the next 2 years. That's indicative of the decline.
much appreciated. I can't tell you how much I appreciate. I gotta ask you, either of you have a very specific idea on how that should be funded? Gotta ask. Either of you want to actually answer that, or do you want to do the Andrew?
Well, I'll split the baby about that. As we talked about, the recurring is important because as I'm capital budget for 5 years from now, when the roof fails, the roof fails, right? And if it's within my 5-year window, I've got to pay for it one way or the other. So to the extent that there is, forgive me for saying this in New Jersey, but an additional fee or something that can create predictable revenue source, that would be very important. Or, the bonding option is important. You create that pool, we know it's there. As much as I would like to suggest that cash would be great for New Jersey, that's a difficult road to how on a year-to-year basis.
Okay.
There are certain programs like energy conservation programs which have well-defined cost savings, and you can go out and get funding and financing for those and amortize the costs over time. In a similar way, emergencies are expensive and temporary repairs can sometimes exceed the cost of the replacement. Tough to quantify, right? Easy to say, tough to quantify. But this is not totally new in New Jersey, so that would be an avenue I think worthy of exploring. But I don't think on the backs of students, particularly at the community college, would be the avenue.
If I could just add that, sir, as we look at, for example, the $11 million bond of deferred maintenance that we're going to hit in a couple of years, based on our current students, that's about $530 a student per year. New Jersey's tuition is reaching at the highest levels of public tuition in the state. There's an elasticity there to the extent that New Jersey wants to maintain an affordable and accessible higher education system. It's going to be hard to do it. You can't do it on tuition alone.
But thank you all. I think this is confirmed. I think most of us have internally said this is a crisis in the state that just simply has to be dealt with. The committee and your folks and the folks who spoke today ultimately put us in a position of clarifying that for the committee very, very well. I'm very grateful for the time. Thank you both. Thank you all. Thank you. All right, let's do some bills. Let's go right in order. S2155.
Senate Bill 2155, with Senate Committee amendments for the sport wagering partnerships at public institutions of higher education. We'll also be considering a new bill, A41131R. The Senate bill, there are proposed amendments. These amendments will specify that foundation institutionally related to a public institution of higher ed is not prohibited from entering into a sports wagering partnership, provided that the partnership cannot include direct advertising or marketing to students, provided the provisions of the bill are not construed to apply to any partnership between a public institution of higher education and casino licensees, sports wagering licensees, or their contracted operators, which the partnership is established for academic purposes or provides experiential learning opportunities to students, and to clarify that the bill only applies to public institutions of higher education rather than all institutions of higher ed. There's only one.
Jen? Anyway, she's in favor, doesn't appear she has any need to testify. Jen, you there? No? Okay, we're going to take that as is. Members, any questions? I've heard a motion to move the bill.
Second.
And I've got a motion by Senator Singer to move it and as amended, and Senator Zwicker, second.
This is a vote to move Senate Bill 2155 with Senate Committee amendments and Assembly Bill 41131R. Senator Singer.
Yes.
Senator Moriarty.
Yes.
Senator Zwicker.
Yes.
Senator Klein.
Yes. Next up, that's 3184.
The next bill, Senate 3184, requires public institution of higher education to establish gambling addiction prevention program. This will be considered at the same time as its Assembly companion bill, A 1715-2R. Please note there are committee amendments to the Senate bill to make it identical to the A bill. The Senate committee amendments will require that at least once per semester and as often as the institution determines to be appropriate, the institution is to invite and facilitate the presence of the Council on Compulsive Gambling of New Jersey on the institution's campus for the purpose of providing information and resources relevant to compulsive gambling. Remove the requirement in the bill for public institutions of higher education to participate in a sports wagering partnership with a sports wagering operator or intermediary to establish a gambling addiction prevention program, and makes technical changes to the bill's title and synopsis.
We have one slip from Jennifer Keys Maloney, just the same as the last, in favor. Anybody else? Members, any questions? So moved. Second. Second. Sounds like the bill is moved by S 3184 as amended. It's moved by Senator Singer and seconded by Senator Zwicker.
This is a vote on Senate Bill 3184 with Senate Committee amendments and Assembly Bill 1715-2R. Senator Singer.
Yes.
Senator Moriarty.
Yes.
Senator Zwicker.
Yes.
Senator Klein.
Yes. Next up, 4010.
Senate Bill 4010 provides for expansion of social services supports at county colleges. There are committee amendments on this one as well. These committee amendments require the New Jersey Council of County Colleges to collaborate with each county college to identify gaps in meeting basic student needs among low-income students, stipulate that information concerning certain social services supports provided by the council to county colleges is to be provided to designated county college representatives rather than students, remove a provision from the bill that would have permitted the council to facilitate partnerships towards the direct provision of services on county college campuses, require the Division of Family Development in the DHS to work with local workforce development boards to assist students with certain applications, and clarify that county colleges and local workforce development boards are only required to establish partnerships with certain workforce-related entities if those partnerships do not currently exist.
Thank you, Sarah. Senator Zwicker, any comment?
No, just civic publicity bill, and obviously these sort of services are critically important for our students. So appreciate the consideration.
Appreciate your leadership, Senator. Thank you. Got a number of folks that have signed up with no need to testify. Adam hasn't worked. I don't say Adam from Catholic. Adam Gustinski. Adam G. From the Chamber of Commerce, South New Jersey. In favor, no need. Everybody's in favor, no need to testify. Althea Ford from the NJBIA. Morris Sanders from Legal Services in New Jersey. Lisa Pitts from Uncle Free, New Jersey. Adele Latourette from Food Bank of New Jersey. Greg Loader from Food Bank of South Jersey. Francine Pfeiffer from the NJEA. And Aaron Fickner, right? Is that how you say it? I got it right, man? Yeah. All right. From New Jersey Council of County Colleges. All in favor, no need to testify. Members, any other comments? Is there a motion? Senator Singer moves the bill.
Second.
Senator Moriarty seconds it.
This is a vote on Senate Bill 4010 with Senate Committee amendments. Senator Singer.
Yes.
Senator Moriarty.
Yes.
Senator Zwicker.
Yes.
Senator Klein.
Yes. Next up is S4023.
Senate Bill 4023 establishes New Jersey Pathways to Career Opportunities Initiative Act. There are no amendments.
No amendments. All right, let's take a look at who signed up here. folks were in favor, no need to testify. Courtney Johnson of Gibbons, African American Chamber of Commerce, in favor, no need to testify. Althea Ford of the NJBIA is in favor, no need to testify. Francine Pfeiffer of the NJA, in favor, no need to testify. Amira Hussein from the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, in favor, no need to testify. Adam G. of the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey is in favor, no need to testify. Members, any comments on the bill? There's been a motion by Senator Singer and second by Senator Moriarty.
We're teamwork.
This is a vote on Senate Bill 4023. Senator Singer.
Yes.
Senator Moriarty.
Yes.
Senator Zwicker.
Yes.
Senator Cryan.
Yes. Thank you all for your support. Next bill up is S 4419, Senator Zwicker's bill. Sarah.
Senate Bill 4419 revises provisions of county college contracts law, permits bidder disqualifications due to prior negative experience. There are no amendments.
Senator, any comment?
No, just to say that this aligns the 2 years. We updated the 4-year contracts while those updates run for 2 years. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have one person signed up in favor, no need to testify. That's Althea Ford of the NJBIA. Members, any other comments on the bill? There's a motion on the bill from Senator Singer and a second from?
Me.
And a second from Senator Zwicker.
This is a vote on Senate Bill 4419. Senator Singer.
Yes.
Senator Moriarty.
Yes.
Senator Zwicker.
Yes.
Senator Cryan.
Yes. Thank you, Senator Zwicker. Next bill up is S 4439.
This bill establishes protections for student athletes in certain institutions of higher education concerning name, image, or likeness compensation, repeals the New Jersey Fair Play Act. There are no amendments.
No amendments, thank you for that. We have one group signed up, Jean Lepore and Matt, is it Todoroff, do I say it correctly? Todoroff, how bad was that? Sorry about it. All right, do you want to speak or are you good? Tell me what you want. If you want to speak, go ahead. You're the only guy.
If the committee's comfortable with the bill, we're good.
Members have any questions on the bill? Move the bill. Safe to say you got it. So with that said, we're gonna go with what we got. Okay. Thank you for your slip. And members, any questions on the bill? Second question, Senator Singer has made a motion to move, and Senator Zwicker has seconded.
This is a vote on Senate Bill 4439. Senator Singer.
Yes.
Senator Moriarty.
Yes.
Senator Zwicker.
Yes.
Senator Cryan.
Yes. Here's the 17, 15 was combined.
Yeah, I combined that.
I think it's just my bill.
Just want to be sure.
Yeah, they were different styles.
All right, we are done with the legislative action of the day. We are going to continue our discussion only, and that will be for S 4272.
Chairman, just one thing before you do that.
Sure.
I would just like to mention that Senator Zwicker made a terrific presentation representing this committee to the Commission on Science and Technology. I appreciate that. He really did an excellent job.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Senator Singer. And you have been the largest supporter for the longest period of time for the Commission and the work that it's doing, and continue to very much appreciate working in partnership with you on the Commission.
Awesome. Good stuff. Okay, for discussion only, Sarah, you want, thank you, Senator Singer, for noting that. Senator Zwicker, thank you for your work. All right. Let's bring up the bill. Let's talk about the bill first, and then I'll bring up speakers.
Senate Bill 4272 repeals law that requires funds for legislative agents to be assessed on student tuition bills in a certain manner.
Ask you for a comment in a minute, Andrew. Just going to start with these. So I'm in no order except the way they are on the file. All right. So Janine Bauer, I have in favor. It doesn't say whether you need to testify or not. Janine Bauer is an attorney with Rutgers Law. Janine, that's you, right?
That's one.
Say hi. Okay. All right. And Doug O'Malley. Yes, Doug. You good here? Okay. I just stopped you. Okay. By the way, next group up, I'll just ask now, just so that we can flow properly, if that's okay. Is it Wynn Cohane?
Could.
Thank you, Wynn. Wynn, you're going to speak next along with Oriana Holmes Price. Are you folks, is Oriana here?
She had to step out.
Is she gone? She's gone, that's fine. I just want to prep the next two folks, because we do have a number of speakers. April Nicholas, is April here? April, that's you? So you guys are up next, how about that? All right, so with that said, Janine, please, why don't you go ahead and give us your, oh, I apologize, Janine, we'll let Senator Zwicker make his comments first, and if you want Doug to go, that's fine by me. All right?
Just to say, Chairman, thank you for posting this bill. There have been certainly lots of questions about what this bill does and what it does not do.
Okay.
This bill's been around in various forms for quite some time, and I just appreciate everyone who's come out to testify so that we can get everything in front of the committee and then decide what we're doing moving forward.
Appreciate that. Doug, I think you've been given the leadoff slot.
I'll take it.
All right.
Just like Francisco Lindor, right? So hopefully I'll hit a home run here. So,
Go Yankees.
yeah, well, yes, the Yankees fans.
Or Singer Moriarty.
Always dangerous to talk about baseball at the same time. So I do want to say I'm really honored to get a chance to testify on this issue. I'm really thankful to you, Chairman Ryan, and to the leadership that Senator Zwicker has shown. And also just to provide an opportunity for education for Senator Moriarty and Senator Singer, perhaps knows about this bill longer than anyone here in the State House. I wanted to start off by saying that, I served officially as a director from Brighton, New Jersey. I've been in that role since 2012. But I got my start working in advocacy in New Jersey as a clean water associate with the Jersey Public Interest Research Group, doing very similar advocacy here in Trenton. I was not directly involved with the New Jersey Public Interest Research Group on campus at Rutgers. And really this bill is about engaging more civic dialogue and civic engagement through Rutgers students directly affiliated with New Jersey Public Interest Research Group. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the organization, it has been in place for more than 50 years. It actually initiated here in the legislature, through then Assemblyman, before he was Speaker, then Assemblyman Tom Keene Sr. And this was in 1972. The organization was created in 1972 on campus. And it was designed in an era where there was a lot of call for change, but the design of the organization was to create change at the local level on campus and then ultimately at the state level. To be able to come up with research, as is in the name, to be able to, and to organize on issues that are gut level issues for students, right? So, and I'll get to it a little bit in a moment on how the organization kind of works on campus. But the whole idea was to work on issues that would be essentially, we often talk about kitchen table issues, these are kind of dorm room issues. So whether it be affordability of higher education, whether it be affordability, these are more issues currently now, affordability of textbooks, whether it be the ability to vote on campus, whether it be the ability to have energy efficient homes and dorms, whether it be clean water. All those issues engage students in the 70s and 80s and certainly today. And the reason why you're here listening to this bill right now is because 30 years ago, there was an effort, a successful effort in the legislature to restrict the ability of students affiliated with New Jersey Public Interest Group to lobby at the state level. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means. We'll hear from students that, and the irony here is we will not hear from any students at Rutgers affiliated with the organization because that is restricted. They're not able to call, they're not able to show up for a lobby day, they're not able to be present on the statewide angle, statewide scene. They can go to Washington, and when they do, they learn a lot. But Washington is not that close to Rutgers, or they're in Camden or New York. And what really this bill is designed to do is make it easier for students to do exactly what we are doing right now. I also just want to talk a little bit, and you have this in front of you, hopefully in the packet, of just how New Jersey PIRG is funded on campus. It's funded through students, and every 3 years, students vote on whether to have a waivable fee on the term limit. And so the printout that hopefully all of you have essentially is an electronic version of that waivable fee. Students can read it, and they can decide whether to provide a semester fee of $13.01. They can decide whether to pay that fee or not to pay that fee. 65% of students most recently pay that fee, 35% don't. And the whole concept of obviously of the organization is that students are able to assess the fee to be able to have the organization be effective on these issues. again, it's not just a vote, it has to be a vote of a certain percentage of students on campus. So literally thousands of students every 3 years vote on whether to have New Jersey PERC students be on the terminal and have waivable fee. And even at that point, students can say, I like the work, I don't like the work, I'm going to pay the fee, I'm not going to pay the fee. And so that's the work that the organization does on campus. But as I said before, there's no other organization in the country that has a waivable fee that is not allowed to lobby at the state level. So that's the other kind of key thing to know. So whether you're in Florida, we actually have an organizer that has met with someone with Carter. She was able to lobby her legislators in Florida, but she was not able to do that in New Jersey. And so we want to take away, that anomaly, and that's really what, why I'm so thankful for Senator Zwicker and his leadership on this issue. For Senator Zwicker, we've obviously focused on kind of small D democracy, finding more ways for young people and all people to get engaged in the democratic process. That is the intent of this legislation. I want to wrap up my testimony because there's a multitude of other people here. Just as saying there's a broad degree of support across, not just here in this room, but from more than 30 organizations across the state, including representatives from AAUP who could not be here today, as well as a trustee for the university, in addition to alums from the Daily Target. And I'll just conclude my testimony by saying that, when I was in college, I cared a lot about politics. I cared about engagement, but I didn't have an opportunity to do anything. Just reading the news felt like that was enough. That generally isn't enough if you care about an issue. And so our hope is that more students at Rutgers will have the opportunity to actually be engaged in the state legislative process. That's the intent of this bill. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I just have two comments. Number one is that it's a little disingenuous, I believe, of having to opt out. You should have to opt in if you want. And that's, I think, not a really small D way to do things. Second of all, I resent your comments about Whitman and your statements. I was there. You weren't. I sat in the rooms when it was discussed. And you're wrong. Not 10% wrong, 100% wrong. But if you want to play that game, you can play the game. But I was there. You were not. So to say that this was done to stifle at the time, I never heard that conversation ever. So maybe you know something I don't. And I have to tell you that, again, it was different times when Tom Kane Sr. Was involved. I served under Tom Kane Sr. I've had lunch with Tom Kane Sr. just last year. So I think if you want to have that discussion, let's have it honestly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. I'm happy to talk more about that. Obviously, you were there. I was not.
Thank you. Janine?
I just want to say one thing. I probably don't agree often with Senator Singer, but as a consumer advocate for about 40 years, I agree that opt-outs are not the best way to go. Opting in should be the way to go. Opt-outs are used often where the box is already checked and you have to uncheck it or something. I don't think that's consumer friendly. As for the gag rule, I don't have a problem with people, speaking their mind, but in terms of opt-in, opt-out, I don't think that's the appropriate way or pro-consumer way to go. Just a statement, don't need an answer, but if you wish to, fine.
The only thing I just say in response to Senator is obviously whether it's a positive checkoff or a negative checkoff, usually the concern is that that's kind of hidden. And then in this issue, every 3 years students have the opportunity to vote on whether the New Jersey PERC fee is on their term bill. So that's the, I think, main distinction. But I understand where you're coming from, and that's a point that obviously other people have made through the years.
Yes, this happens all the time. Boxes are already checked and quick, you're going through stuff and then you don't uncheck it, you get charged. Maybe you didn't care or maybe you didn't mean to do it. So, but I don't think that that's consumer friendly. I think it's a way to net a lot of people that probably wouldn't be captured if they actually knew what they were doing. And by the way, what's the 1 penny?
That's a 1301, good question. In terms of looking at the rate that was based on raising it, I believe 1% more. It was designed to not meet inflation. It only, the last time the fee had been raised was, I believe, in 2013.
Yeah.
So when it was raised in 2021, obviously there was actually, 2022, there had been a lot of inflation, but we knew obviously the students, every penny matters and every dollar matters. So it was just a percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've never worked in retail, it would have been $12.99.
Says the consumer advocate.
That's true. And just one last point, Senator, just on the percentage of students, it varies over time. So sometimes it's 55% of students that pay the fee and 45% that don't. So, obviously your point remains, but students have the opportunity to opt out, and a good chunk of them do.
I won't belabor this, but I can guess that if this was an opt-in, the numbers would be dramatically different.
Fair point, and something we'll do and consider legislation. Yeah, I do. Many students participate. Is it a very, very high percentage that actually votes every 3 years?
Yeah, so that's the
Did you say
process.
65, or did I miss that?
Yeah, that's 65% of students.
Okay, sorry. Please, go ahead, Judy.
Thank you very much. My name is Janine Bauer. I'm an attorney in private practice for 41 years now. I was there not when it started in the 1970s, but shortly thereafter, and I was privileged while I was at Rutgers Law School to actually attend the trial in Camden in federal court of the Golda v. Blaustein student fee litigation based on what were the only two precedents at the time, one of which was a union fee case and the other was in a different context. And I followed that and been a part of my practice, which most of the day involves cleanup of toxic waste sites as an environmental lawyer, but I've been involved in First Amendment and right to associate and right not to associate matters for all of these 41 years since I was very privileged to see that trial and how Judge Barron handled it, as well as the Third Circuit. And in fact, I wrote my law review article on the Third Circuit opinion appeal of Judge Brotman's decision in the student fee case. So while I didn't realize I was going to address that, and I'm not sure what the interplay is between the preference by a couple of senators for an opt-in fee versus the mechanism that's currently in place. The fact is that an opt-in fee, I do not believe would pass muster under the current Supreme Court precedent, which is Board of Regents versus Southwind, because it would not be viewpoint neutral. And by viewpoint neutral, and there are several cases on this now, but Board of Regents, that was the Wisconsin PERG fee, as well as the rest of the student fees that were mandatory at the University of Wisconsin. So the same situation, obviously, the state university system. That's 529 US 217 from 2000, and there's been plenty of precedent that's interpreted that now, and that actually did go to trial on remand as well. It's not the student groups that have to be quote unquote viewpoint neutral from a political perspective. In other words, they don't have to just bring food to a shelter or something like that that has no political, or arguably no political content. It's the process that has to be viewpoint neutral, and I'm quite sure under the precedents, all of which I read in preparation for my testimony, so I knew what I was going to talk about with respect to the GAG bill, which I haven't gotten to yet. I'm confident that singling out the PERG fee, which I think is actually the most democratic fee, although I certainly take your points and understand them, would not pass muster under the viewpoint neutrality forum that's created by the otherwise mandatory fee, which continues to be allowed, and the whole purpose of it is because the university is considered to need to embrace as part of its educational mission all kinds of points of view, and that's what it does. So New Jersey PERG has taken the extra step, and Rutgers has taken the extra step of not only requiring the referendum, but but also not having a refundable fee, which is what was challenged in 1981, but having a completely waivable fee. Now, of course, you don't have to, take my advice, but that would be my,
Don't,
okay.
at all.
Well, that's fine, that's fine. So, and the only other thing I want to say is there are 3 branches, and it really is a tremendous disservice to students. I think that's the point I want to make, to allow them to do something like I did as a Rutgers per-fee-paying student at law school to be able to go over to the courthouse. And we're very lucky in New Jersey because to come to Trenton is possible for everybody, no matter what campus you're at and what college you're at. To not hear from our students, I don't think we should be doing that. I think it's unlawful, but I guess nobody's challenged it over these 30 years for whatever reason. But I just think that it's sort of a moral imperative to hear from these young people. These young people are going to be taking over, certainly for me and for all of us, and I welcome them to the forum, this forum, as well as that forum at the university, our judiciary and everything else. I'm sure you all know, at least those of you who are lawyers, that students are allowed to practice in our courts. They have to be supervised. Why would we not let a student come down and sit at the microphone and tell you what's going on, that might relate to a bill that's in front of you? So that's really my pitch.
I agree with that one.
Thank you. And
Very
thank you
helpful.
for considering this.
Sure.
I just wanted to follow up to what you just said and to Senator Moriarty's point. So just so it's really clear. If I understood what Senator Moriarty was saying, he was saying the default should be that you're opted out and you can actively opt in, as opposed to right now the other way around. But you're saying that it's your belief based on court precedent that in particular changing the default would be deemed unconstitutional.
That's what I think.
That's your,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's not a content neutral process.
How is being how is already being opted in content neutral?
That's why we have courts.
Yeah. So there's a third way.
Is there-
There's a third way. Here's this. So if you're online and you're going through something and you have to fill in your name and address and certain information to check out, let's say. If you go to the bottom and you go to check out and you missed something, you didn't answer something, or you left out something critical, it won't let you check out. You end up having to go back up and you realize, oh, I forgot to put in my zip code or whatever. There is a possibility that technically you could just make it so that when you get to this, you have to check, yes, I want to pay this, or no, I don't want to pay it. Now that's certainly neutral. Won't let you check out until you go back and make a selection.
The defect in that process is that none of the other student groups that are asking for access to the student fee forum, okay, that's what it is, it's a student fee
Right.
forum for speech or whatever they're doing services, don't do that.
Well, I'm advocating that they all should.
They all should,
They
absolutely.
all should. I'm not just trying to pick out per, I'm saying they all should be, that you get to actively pick. That you shouldn't already be checked that you're willing to pay it, and then you have to opt out, or that you have to pay it. You should be able to have some say in that. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to belabor the
Well, I
point.
think it's safe to say it's going to create some discussion for senators
Yeah.
looking at reform. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
both very much.
But I agree, people should be able to come and speak their mind. No one should be gagged.
Thank you, sir.
Well, when in April are coming up, I'm going to go ahead and read off the number of folks that have left the slips that are, and then we can just go through the last couple. Evelyn Corby from Volton Solar is in favor, no need to testify. Daniel Jankowski is here from Action Together, NJ Action Fund, in favor, no need to testify. Mariah Kinberg, I hope I say it correct, she's with Working Family, New Jersey Working Families, in favor, no need to testify. Jeannie Fox from Rutgers University Trustees, in favor, no need to testify. Bill Harlow, former editor, Daily Target, Rutgers alum, Everybody knows Bill. In favor, no need to testify. Amy Goldsmith, and Amy is with Clean Water Action. She's in favor, no need to testify. Alex Ambrose of New Jersey Policy Perspective, in favor, no need to testify. Kathy Monteleone, I believe is how I say it correctly, AAUP, BHS&J, she's the president. In favor, no need to testify. Brian, I hope I say it correct, Sachs. It's either S-A-T-K-S or S-A-C. Sachs, I'll say right, there's adjunct. Facility Union, in favor, no need to testify. Todd Wolfson is AAUP, AFT, in favor, no need to testify. And I have two folks, after these two folks speak, who I'm not quite certain. Liz Glenn? Liz, you gonna speak?
Yep.
Okay, and Charlie? Charlie, you speaking?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so those will be our last two speakers. So that said, Wynn, why don't you go ahead and go first, and April, why don't you go second?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chairman, esteemed senators, and to this committee. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm not affiliated with Rutgers. I am also not a lawyer. So I'm here as an advocate for these wonderful students. And I brought my old school poster board that I made. So first of all, I'd like to really thank Senator Zwicker and Petra, who was also his chief of staff when he was then Assemblyman. We've been working on this bill for 5 years. And it all started when my work as Executive Director of Action Together New Jersey, I travel across the state to talk about voter education, talk specifically vote by mail before we had the pandemic and everyone voted by mail en masse. I was a featured speaker when we had Zoom in 2020 with NJ Berg. And at the end of the voter education session, I said, you guys, we really could use your voices on a new bill that Senator Zwicker has been working on, the new Voter Empowerment Act that allows 17-year-olds to vote in the primary should they turn 18 on or before the November election. So how about it? Who can join us? And they said, well, we really can't because we're gagged. And I'm like, what does that mean? They said, well, we can't testify in Trenton because of this rule called the gag rule, and if we do, we lose our funding. I said, that doesn't sound right. I said, but, I'm happy to help raise funds for y'all because you should be able to voice your opinions because what you're telling me only happens in Vietnam, in my home country, not in America. What are you talking about? Maybe you're not clear. What is it, 15,000, 20,000? I'm happy to do a fundraiser. Now, mind you, the most I've ever fundraised was 13,000. It's a stretch, but I'm like, these kids deserve it. And I come to find out from National PERG that was $500 million a year. So before this gag rule, we had NJ PERG students here in Trenton testifying in support or against certain bills. After the gag rule, that stopped. So it was egregious to me in hearing this as somebody, I'm like, well, why haven't you guys tried to turn this, by this time it was a quarter of a century. They said, well, it's a classic catch-22. If we advocate, we lose the funding. And so that's an effective way of shutting us up. We can, but we're not going to get that funding. I said, well, aren't there, and then my nonprofit is tiny. I'm the only paid staff member. And I said, well, aren't there like big legacy organizations that can help y'all do this and help turn it? And they said, well, we can't hire them. And so unless some big donor or trustee or foundations pay for it, we can't advocate for it. So it's gone for now 29 years without students. And I want to thank every one of you for being in this committee, because as a mom of 3, one just graduated college, 2 more in college, I know how expensive it is. I'm watching my budget. They eat so much, my grocery bills are high. I get the $13 and a penny, that is a lot, y'all. And then my electricity bills, I don't have air conditioning, I'm trying to get a heat pump. I know what it is to have young people who eat a lot, who cost a lot, etc. So I want to thank you all when you guys are making these decisions about how we fix these buildings, how do we help the students in New Jersey. I have a kid at the College of New Jersey. So I want to, first of all, thank you so much for all your work. Secondly, I believe in these students. I really, really do. Trenton is amazing that our students could, once again, if we do a gag rule repeal and we work through the intricacies of waivable, optional, whatever, that they can come here, they can study the bills, and they can speak to their experience, what they're for or against, and get a real life experience. And in supporting this bill for 5 years now, it's been 5 years, Senator, I have learned that NJPERG is a hotbed of amazing, amazing people. For example, Assemblywoman Alexa Colossus-Beal, who could not be here, she is an alumni at NJPERG. She actually was the last class before the gag rule was instituted. We have chiefs of staff, like for example, the latest one is the chief of staff of Senator Goldstein, Matthew Brodsky, NJPERG alum. We have so many people here, you know, among staffers and legislators who have experience. So I really like the institution. Again, I'm not affiliated, I'm not a lawyer, but I really believe in the program and what they do, and they're for public interest research group. And if you see here what they do, they're advocating for lower cost of votes. They have registered tens of thousands of new voters in the 29 years. They do great work, and I want to do everything I can, and all the hours that Doug and everyone else who's going to testify, none of it is funded. We're all volunteers because we believe in these kids. And again, I want to tell you, before the gag rule, they were here. They spoke their minds. They studied the program, the different legislation. They organized, they came after the gag rule. You haven't seen them. And I'd like for us to go back where we see these young people. Thank you.
I mean, thanks a lot. April?
Senator Goldstein.
I just want to say one thing if I could. First of all, thank you very much. Your passion is wonderful. Thank you for bringing an old school poster. I love it. And I'd be happy to donate $13.01 to your air conditioning fund.
Oh, okay.
All right.
See me
I'm
after.
going to take you up on that. Venmo, Zelle.
All right. April, why don't you go ahead?
All right, thank you. Well, my name is April Nicholas. I'm a Rutgers alumni, resident of New Brunswick, and my main interest in this bill is as the former state chairperson for the New Jersey Public Interest Research Group student chapters, which, as Doug O'Malley mentioned earlier, has been around at Rutgers since 1972. It's student-run, it's student-funded, it has a defined mission of working on a set of public interest issues, including environmental protection, consumer protection and higher education affordability, hunger and homelessness, voting and democracy, youth engagement, and public health. So there's a defined set of issues that the organization works on and provides training and support to students across the university system to run effective strategic campaigns around the policies that they support on those issues. And I was lucky enough to be one of the students that came up through this program and learned a lot of both life skills and professional skills from my work there. I was a student leader with NJPERG from 2015 to 2019. I worked on campaigns to promote the adoption of clean energy, like rooftop solar, reducing single-use plastics on campus, creating an affordable textbooks program at Rutgers that has saved students over $6 million collectively. And above all, nonpartisan voter registration as part of a Voters Project campaign, where I worked closely with Rutgers administration and faculty to make voting and civic engagement a core part of our campus culture. I know there's been a lot of discussion already on the funding mechanism and how the fee works and what it looks like on the term bill. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions on that, because I have been a student, I've had the fee on my term bill, I know exactly what it looks like and how I can click one button to make it go away. I also know that tens of thousands of students vote in order for that fee to be in place in the first place, and I also know that it's an arduous, year-plus long process to jump through all the hoops with the administration to be allowed to run the referendum, to have the strict oversight from all of these student governments across the campuses on every single decision, down to can the polling place be here or is it 5 feet to the left? Very strict rules. And I've had conversations with many hundreds of my peers about this, who have to vote in favor of the fee in order for it to exist on the term bill in the first place. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about the funding system for the organization. But I will note that the bill that's in front of the committee for discussion is actually quite simple. It's just a matter of repealing a law that restricted the ability of students with this organization to be here and exercise their free speech rights in the state capitol and speak with their legislators about issues that are important to them. When I was a student leader with NJPIRG, I was able to do a lot of great work. I was able to advocate for that affordable textbooks program on campus to save my classmates and myself millions of dollars collectively over the years. I was able to go to DC and meet with federal representatives to urge continued funding and support for the Pell Grant to make higher education more accessible for low and moderate income families. But I was not allowed to meet with my own state legislators as a representative of NJPIRG students and ask them to support higher education affordability. I was not allowed to testify at hearings and tell the legislature that our organization supports environmental legislation. I was not allowed to make a phone call or send an email to legislators telling them that as the chairperson of NJPIRG students, I care about a bill that they're going to vote on. So this is purely a matter of public participation and whether or not the students who work with this organization have the same rights that everyone else already has to come and speak with you all and voice their opinions the same as everyone else. It's just about having the same rights, no more, no less. I'm very glad to be able to be here and speak with you today as an alumni of the organization because I have the current position with the organization. I'm no longer restricted in my speech in that way, and I'm just asking you to give the current student leaders back their rights to do the same thing.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you both.
Just one, we're done. Just
Two more speakers.
thank you. Just very quickly, I would say you raised an interesting point that every 3 years the students vote on this. So as we talk after this hearing on the various legal issues, to Senator Moriarty's point, there is a built-in check every 3 years at least. So we'll work through the rest of it after this hearing. But thank you.
April Wynn, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Liz Glynn, New Jersey Citizen Action, and Charlie Crowder. Charlie, you're with Food and Water Watch these days?
That's correct.
Okay, come on up. Liz, you go first. Charlie, you back cleanup.
All right. All right, thanks so much for holding this discussion here today. So my name is Liz Glynn, and I am currently the organizing director for the New Jersey Citizen Action. And I'm here in support of repealing the rule that restricts the voices of the students who are involved with the New Jersey Public Interest Research Group and NJPIRG chapters. But I served actually previously as the organizing director for the for the student chapters. I was also the program director for New Jersey PIRG's former AmeriCorps program called Community Water Watch. And I actually also was able to develop the organization's Energy Service Corps program. And I started as a campus organizer in 2005, and I worked with New Jersey PIRG until 2012. So I worked firsthand with the students, and I can confidently say that the students, like April, who you just heard from, they're impressive. They develop critical leadership skills. They learn how to communicate to their peers on campus and engage in meaningful conversations about real-world problems like hunger and homelessness, college affordability, climate change, the list goes on. They register their peers to vote, they organize fundraisers, they coordinate Earth Day stream cleanups, and more. These are young people who care deeply about problems, and they want to learn all the ways they can be addressing these problems, and they want to learn beyond direct service. They want to engage in conversations around public policy and how decisions are made. Obviously, the big problem that everyone is just pointing out here is that there's a huge gap in their knowledge and their experience, and this current law prohibits them from having a greater, more enriching experience to really see how decisions are made here on the statewide level. This is limiting their democratic experience, and really I think this prohibition on their speech is undemocratic. towards, what their interests are. I mean, the statewide board of the student chapter leaders, they meet every year and they propose campaigns, they discuss issues every year, and they decide what they want their priorities to be. State environmental legislation or state funding of higher education would often be raised and discussed, but they had to be repeatedly told that they couldn't actually work on any campaigns related to that because that would involve going and actually talking to state legislators. This past summer, I also had the pleasure of once again working with a New Jersey PERG student leader, Mujan Mohi from Rutgers University in Newark. She worked with Citizen Action as part of the Rutgers Summer Service Internship Program that they have. And I'll say Mujan was equally passionate, just like April, very impressive and knowledgeable. And she was really eager to learn about advocacy and organizing. And she was especially excited because I was able to finally bring her here to the State House. And she participated in our annual Advocacy Day. She was able to learn firsthand about the state budget. She came in June during state budget season to understand what was going on in this process. She got to attend the committee hearing on medical debt and learn how a bill is debated and see actually a vote decided firsthand. And she was able to directly interact with the legislators. As you know, as we already stated, this is something that she was prohibited from doing with the New Jersey PERG student chapters, and I feel strongly that all the students should be given the same opportunity to have this kind of engaging and enriching experience. And their voices are missing and they should be heard on the state level. And I'll just say again, Mujan, she's undoubtedly a future leader, which meant tremendous potential. I could see her working for a state legislator, or in state government, or as a community advocate in the future. And she could be gaining about valuable experience, learning about legislation and advocacy as she's continuing to work with the New Jersey PERG student chapters. She'd be building on the experience she had this past summer if it were not for the current restrictions. I would just lastly say I'm also a Rutgers alum. I graduated from Rutgers from the School of Communications with a degree in Journalism and Media Studies. I also studied environmental policy, institutions, and behavior at what was formerly known as Cook College. And I know firsthand that Rutgers prides itself on the experiential learning opportunities, the ability to offer students meaningful civic engagement opportunities, and the New Jersey PERG student chapters fits that really critical, important part of their mission. So, thank you.
Thank you. I have no doubt you graduated from communications. Any questions? Thank you. Charlie, you want to give us something we don't know already?
I will abbreviate my remarks because so many people make great points, but I am Charlie Prattville. I am with Food and Water Watch speaking to you today on behalf of our 72,000 members and supporters around the state. I'm also a proud alumnus of Rutgers University, a resident in New Brunswick, and though I wasn't involved in the New Jersey PERG students, I was a canvasser and campus director with New Jersey PERG. I'll just start by thanking you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this. Thank you, Senator Zwicker, for proposing this. Freedom of speech is an important American value, but for the past 3 decades, a very specific set of Rutgers University students have been prevented from using their voices to advocate for their own interests or the interests of others right here in this building. The same students can advocate at the federal, county, local level, but because of that bad law passed in the early 90s, they can't advocate to you all at the state level. This makes no sense and there's no good reason for it. Adopting S4272 would correct this injustice and right this wrong, and it's right up your alley as the Higher Education Committee. Not only is this an issue dealing with student groups, advocating here is an educational experience. And I often fondly think back to my first couple of times coming to this building and how much I learned coming to committee hearings and just watching and observing. And I think that it's very unfortunate that the current New Jersey PERG students can't get that educational experience, and I hope that you'll act to ensure that they do. I will say, just as a resident in New Brunswick for over 20 years, there's perhaps no advocacy group that's been as consistent and effective at getting students involved as New Jersey PERG. They deserve credit for persevering and continuing to advocate in ways that they are permitted to. And they always take a nonpartisan approach, a public policy approach, And they probably register more voters than anyone else in New Brunswick because they care about empowerment and civic engagement. Now you have a chance to empower them by removing the gag rule that prohibits them from engaging in state-level advocacy. I urge you to please pass S4272. Happy to take any questions.
Seems like a good way to close. Anybody have any other comments? Motion. Jolly, good way to close. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. We are very grateful for them and your patience.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it.
Is there a motion to?
Motion. Second.
All right, we agree.
Aye.
Okay, there you go. Go to the next slide.
Good, yeah.